Outriders is a third-person shooter and the latest release by studio People Can Fly, the studio behind the underrated Bulletstorm and Gears of War Judgment, which I haven't played since it originally came out. Outriders merges together the brutal gore-filled combat of Gears of War, the RPG mechanics of Destiny 2, and the teamwork mechanics of The Division 2. While there is a bit of flack with the open beta when it released not too long ago, after spending over a week with Outriders, it's actually pretty fun. When you fire up Outriders for the first time, you create and customize your own creative character really, with their own hairstyles and sex and piercings, all of which can be altered later on as well. There was a small detail in here that actually set things off on the right foot for me, and I don't know why it blew my feeble little mind, but the character's irises expand. Yeah, it's a small detail, whoop-de-fucking-do, and it's a pointless paragraph that I'm talking about this now, but the detail got to me. The graphics and the character creation isn't bad, I just wish we had some tattoos and some more customization options, but let's get further into Outriders, shall we? Outriders starts with a very Aliens intro, with a spaceship arriving at a planet, and I immediately thought of the Sulaco. There's even a scene at the start of the game that is pulled straight from Alien Covenant, with goo going into someone's face. I mean, that's not really a great starting point if I have to think of Alien Covenant now, is it? Now, the story of Outriders with the basic plot information that Earth has used all of its resources and has sent 2 ships out into space to look for a new planet. One of the spaceships was destroyed, and the fate of humanity stands with your ship arriving at the planet of Enoch. After arriving on the planet, the Outriders, a elite squad, come in contact with a deadly energy storm. Your character gets caught in the energy storm, and the Outriders are turned on by security forces. After taking on security forces, you'll take a couple of rounds in the gut and you'll go into cryostasis, and you'll wake up 31 years later to a completely different world, characters changing, and you'll be immediately captured and thrown into a trenched war zone where there is another energy storm approaching. From here you'll notice that from your earlier exposure to the energy storm, you have been altered and have abilities. This is where Destiny 2's mechanics start to creep in, as you then pick a class that will alter the way you play Outriders. You'll have your standard RPG classes to choose from, like a tank and DPS, and even a hit and run style that will deal some serious damage. There are a total of 4 classes to pick, and I picked the Pyromancer class. This class excels at mid-range combat engagements, but crumbles at close range. Naturally, depending on what class you pick, you'll have unique abilities. You'll start off with the Pyromancer having a fire wave attack, before unlocking abilities that can interrupt enemies, siphoning health, and even firing incendiary rounds. I found the class system in Outriders works better to that in Destiny 2 in my opinion. Each class feels like they have a purpose, where personally I found the classes in Destiny 2 all could do the same sort of thing. Anyways, you also get to change your character's weapons and armor. Certain weapons and armor also provide buffs, like being able to use a ability twice before it needs to cool down. If there is a weapon or armor piece that you love as well, you'll be able to level up that gear by using resources like iron and leather, which you'll get from killing certain monsters, mining for materials, or dismantling items you no longer want. Combat in Outriders is very similar to that of Gears of War or The Division 2. However, unlike Gears of War, depending on what enemy faction you're facing off against, depends on how the combat unfolds. Going up against rival factions of humans, you need to take cover and watch out for snipers and heavy units and all that shit. Facing off against monstrous creatures who act a little bit like the Horde from the Left 4 Dead, you'll need to be constantly moving a little bit like Doom. If you're playing with friends too, you'll have even more enemies spawn, which can get easily daunting. One particular area in a cave, the lads and I got completely surrounded by creatures, and the second time round we needed to plan our attacks and call out who's reloading. With your abilities too, for your selected class, you'll only be able to have 3 equipped at once, and on higher difficulties, you'll need to coordinate with your team and your teammates who has what abilities and when you're using them. When played with friends, Outriders absolutely shines, at least in my opinion. The game is honestly made to be played with friends. Sure, you can play Outriders solo, and the story is kinda boring. The story of Outriders is pretty confusing and honestly a bit boring after a while, but while the combat and RPG mechanics make up for it if you're playing with mates. Levels are harder with more enemies. If your friends enjoy games like Destiny or The Division, they'll probably enjoy Outriders, but it's also not for everybody. My Gears of War buddy Ian at Scriptable and I played about an hour and a half of Outriders on Xbox, as it was included with Game Pass, and he stopped playing Outriders to play Crash Bandicoot 4. Outriders is a bit like a diversive movie, say like Blade Runner for example. If you're not interested after an hour or so, you probably won't enjoy the rest of the game, or even Blade Runner 2049 for that example. Outriders also takes another page out of Destiny 2's book with its level and zone structure. You'll go through snowy and volcanic mountaintops, World War II inspired trench towns, caves, and more. Each area will have higher level threats, better loot, and more side missions. You'll be able to move through these new areas with your own personalised truck. Now, not only is the truck used in cutscenes, but it can also be customised with paint jobs, custom wheels, and even changing some body kit aspects. As you'd expect, moving through new areas, you'll have missions that you'll escort your truck through dangerous cliff edges or through enemy camps, a bit like when you guide Dizzy and Betty in Gears of War 2. It kinda sucks though that you can't drive or really use your truck. It's more of a customisable base of operations than anything else. It could have been cool if you actually drove the truck while your friends or your party would defend or repair the said truck, or if you could remotely call your truck to provide you with some temporary cover from enemy fire or something. Outriders is a load of fun when you're playing with a crew of like-minded friends, and thankfully Outriders is crossplay with PC, PlayStation and Xbox. However, Outriders does have some problems, obviously. The story is basically a condom wrapper, and you're wanting the gameplay inside while the wrapper just gets thrown on the floor. The voice acting from both characters and your custom characters isn't great. It's actually worse than Terminator Resistance. The dialogue or script written for the story feels like a 90s Sylvester Stallone script like Dread or Over the Top or Daylight. You don't watch those films for the story, do you? Outriders is also made to be played with friends, and playing it solo is like going to a bar or a pub yourself. It's actually kinda sad. Finally, there are cutscenes used to load into the next scene, which yes, normally makes sense, but there are 2 to 3 second cutscenes of your characters opening a door or squeezing through rocks. They're just pointless, and anytime I saw one of these cutscenes coming up, I was excited for one of my mates' response.
Oh, that was so necessary, hey? Yeah.
Anytime you want to go into your inventory system or your skill page to change out a weapon or skill, there's an actual 1 to 2 second load time. If the game paused, I'd have no real problem with this, but as this is a live game like the aforementioned Destiny 2 or The Division, you'll still be getting shot at by enemies, and it just takes too long to bring up a simple menu system. There's also a heap of other pointless cutscenes, like anytime there's a new boss or threat emerging, you'll have a cutscene for executing a bounty. Why do we have all these damn pointless fucking cutscenes? The funny thing is too, these cutscenes can be skipped. Towards the end of the game, and spoilers here I guess, but not really as well, the final boss fight has the exact same mechanics of a smaller fight that you'll experience throughout the main campaign, which is basically the same as the Ancient Gods Part 2 for Doom Eternal, where the Dark Lord plays exactly like a Marauder fight. Also, during the last portion of the game, I got a bug where the screen had a red tinge throughout the gameplay and cutscenes, and all I could hear was the heartbeat of low health. It was even louder than cutscene dialogue, and I couldn't hear what was going on, even for the final cutscene of the campaign.
Access the bridge.
Not long before the last boss fight too, you'll go up against about 5 enemies who all deal a load of damage, but they can also fucking heal themselves. It took me and the lads way too long to deal with this boss fight, where we had to turn the difficulty down from 8 to 3 on the difficulty slider. It honestly went from saying benching a comfortable 60 kilos on the bench press to going to 140 immediately, just expecting you to lift it and you'll be fine, where it just turned into something that wasn't enjoyable, and I kinda hovered over Alt F4 for a decent fraction of this last endpoint of the game. Outriders carefully pulls mechanics and ideas from multiple franchises together and creates its own world and genre. While its story gets confusing as you progress, and even more so if friends are joining your campaign and they're not up to date, its entertaining and somewhat brutal combat keeps you glued to the screen. Teamwork, coordination and calling out attacks with mates, for me honestly, never gets old, and that's why I love these PvE styles of games. However, if you and your crew aren't ones to call out ammo suppliers or who's using what attack, or enjoy team-based games where you can sink your teeth into the world, Outriders might not be for you. On the other hand though, if you are a giant nerd like me, then Outriders could be your thing. If you're on Xbox, I highly recommend checking out Outriders on Game Pass and seeing what the game's like from there. If not, I hope this video has given you an idea for the game. I'll be back next week talking about Subverse.
I'm your daddy.
I thought you were dead. You'll soon be dead if you don't get your ass to Shears right now.
I'm your daddy.
All right.
That's
Come
so
meet me
dumb.
there when you're